What would you say you do here?
Well, look, I already told you. I deal with the goddamn customers so the engineers don't have to. I have people skills. I am good at dealing with people. Can't you understand that? What the hell is wrong with you people?
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. It's time for some more comic industry news. Going to be talking about the new era of Valiant Comics. As some of you may know, I'm an enormous fan of Valiant Comics, at least I was for a while. During the Dinesh Shamdasani, Warren Simmons era, it has since been taken over by a Chinese media entity called DMG Entertainment. Things have not gone well. Sales have plummeted. They've made several head-scratching hires, not only to their editorial team, Heather Ontos, but just the creators. They literally brought in a smorgasbord of never made it in comic books, except for a couple of key creators like Brett Booth, Tim Seeley, Dan Abnett. Otherwise, it was like, let's bring in B. Clay Moore. Let's bring in Max Visaggio. Let's bring in all the dregs that have never actually sold a comic book. Ever. Let's bring them on board. It has not gone well. But Heather Ontos has moved on. Before that, the executive editor had already moved on. We're waiting to see what the changes are going to be. So far, we haven't seen a lot of changes, other than there's one comic series I can actually recommend from Valiant right now. It's called SHADOWMAN. But apparently, there's a new era. There's a new sheriff in town. Rob Levin is coming over from Humanoid, where he was an executive editor, to be an executive editor at Valiant Comics. Sounds like a lateral move, but when you think about Humanoid in comparison to Valiant, it's even more minuscule. It has no shared superhero universe and is actively avoided by readers. When you see, you're like, hey, Heather Ontos is gone. You could only look up. Then you're like, nah, these guys are still morons. A tiger can't change its stripes, and Valiant cannot make a halfway decent, logical hire as far as the direction for their comic book brand. Got to bring over some of the good vibes from Humanoid, because everybody's been talking about that publisher forever. There are other indie publishers where you could go out there and maybe get some of the magic that they're doing, bring it on board with an upward movement, and maybe get some excitement going with your shared comic universe and Valiant Comics. You think Boom Studios, right? You're not going to get the editor-in-chief at Boom, or maybe even one of the group editors, but you know what Boom has? They've got sales, and they actually have a couple of shared kind of superhero universe. When you think of, obviously, the Hellboy, BPRD stuff, as well as the Black Hammer universe from Jeff Lemire. They're actually managing stuff that Valiant Comics would like to do. But you don't go there to search for their magic. You don't even go to like Scout Comics, which might be, I don't know, it's probably on the same level at Valiant by now with the sales, but it certainly has a better reputation among readers. Not the history that Valiant does, but it has a better reputation right now. They don't go there. We're going to go to Humanoid, get some of that wonderful Mark Waid magic, see if we can bring it over to Valiant Comics, as if they haven't driven enough readers away. And right off the bat, we're going to get in here. We're going to start talking about Rob Levin, the hire, and some of the pie in the sky thinking that the man has. He's got words to say, but they're essentially meaningless. And if you look at what the plan is, it doesn't sound very good. And then when you think about how this guy got hired, it seems even dumber. So let's get right into it. This is what Rob Levin, former executive editor of Humanoid, now executive editor of Valiant Comics, had to say. While I can't reveal any specifics just yet, readers will start seeing more of those connections over the coming months, talking about a shared comic universe, all building to a crescendo in a book that will pay dividends for longtime fans and also deliver an amazing entry point into the Valiant universe. We're getting an event book. That's what Valiant Comics needs right now. That's the reason they haven't been successful. It's not that they can't get their own characters straight. They have no sense of the history of the characters to actually do anything with them. And then they're constantly rebooting them now. They just haven't had an event. I can't imagine a better time for an event book than 2021, 2022, where Valiant Comics can't sell any of their main characters. And they're also going to use it as a launching point for a new team book that's never been seen at Valiant Comics. They can't sell Exo Man of War. They can't sell Bloodshot. They can't sell Ninjak now. And they apparently can't sell Shadow Man. But they're going to launch a new team book that no one's ever heard of with no built-in interest. I'm going to say that Rob Levin's pie in the sky thinking doesn't go well here. Now, there's a good chance that these things were already in the pipeline before he was hired. So I'll admit that part. And then when you find out how he got hired, obviously, he's replacing somebody. The guy he was replacing is David Wohl. He's moving on to be the executive editor of Zenoscope, another competitor. And this is how Rob got hired. I've known Rob for well over a decade. This is David Wohl. And during that time, I've had the great fortune to be able to work with him on many diverse projects. That's why when my personal situation changed and I needed to move on, I immediately reached out to Rob to see if he'd consider joining the team. The guy that was in charge of a fledgling shared superhero universe got to pick his replacement. The man that could not manage the line, tell any kind of interesting story, bring any type of creators that would generate enthusiasm other than a couple here and there. I mean, Brett Booth had already moved on long ago. He's the one that decides who's going to replace him. This thing needs an overhaul. Why? It's like, listen, we know that you're not doing so well here on the Cleveland Browns. You know, we're 2-14. We're going to move on. Who's your replacement going to be? And Cage's like, yeah, I know just the guy for the team. No, you wipe it out. You keep a couple key people in place, you know, for some stability. Then you bring in a whole new team to revamp the line, rejuvenate the situation, and see if there's something left that you can get people to come back for. But not Valiant Comics. You totally screwed up the job here. Who's your replacement? I know the guy. His name's Rob Levin. He's a humanoid. Wish we could get those humanoid sales. You know what I'm saying? My goodness. And this is obviously what Rob Levin also had to say. Hey, in full disclosure, I don't expect Rob Levin to come out here and be like, listen, times at Valiant Comics couldn't be worse. If things don't improve, the company might go under within months. We honestly cannot see a way to get this thing turned around. I wouldn't expect this. You just be a bit honest and have a fair assessment of the situation and let the readers know who have left Valiant Comics that things aren't going well and they're going to see changes. These are the changes you're going to see. A new event, a new team, and we're keeping everybody else in place. This is what Rob has to say. We have a fantastic team in place and a shared goal. Deliver stories that will engage and enthrall everyone from our diehard fans to our first-time readers. There are no first-time readers because there's no enthusiasm for the brand. And your diehard fans, they fucked off a couple years ago. There's nobody left. And you think about the teams that they have in place. There's one good team. Shockingly, Cullen Bunn, one of the most boring superhero writers in the entire world. Pretty decent horror writer. His Shadow Man horror-themed superhero is actually good. I would recommend Shadow Man to just about anybody. Shockingly, it's written like a comic book. Each issue has a main villain. It resolved the issue as there's one overarching story that continues. It's shocking. Mind blown. Couldn't believe that was actually happening in a comic book these days. Where's Bloodshot? We haven't seen a new Bloodshot comic since March. That was number 12. Tim Seeley, after Brett Booth had moved on, I can't remember the name of the artist. They don't even have a Bloodshot series going right now. That just had a movie. NinjaK. I'm sorry, it's Ninjak again. Was NinjaK when Valiant Comics rebooted under Dinesh Shamdasani, built a lot of lore around the name NinjaK, how there's the ninja program and you had ninjas A, B, C, D, and they all had different technologies and skills and all this kind of thing. It was actually really cool. In fact, they they put Ninja K on the sidelines so they could write a killer story by B. Claymore that sold absolute dick and highlight a couple of the more diverse versions of ninjas within the ninja program. And then they bring him back as Ninjak, ignoring everything that's been built before this. And they put the most boring, shitty, flat, lifeless artist, Javier Pulido, I've ever seen. I've seen Javier Pulido's art look better, but he was never a good choice for a ninja comic. Like, how do you pick this guy? You're like, you know what would be badass for ninja action? Boring, flat images that do not display ninjas doing anything kinetic or awesome. That's who we need to bring in. So that thing's already dead in the water. I'm sure they sold some issues just because there was some controversy over how shitty his art was. But that thing will die a very quick death. Exo Manowar died Dennis Hopeless Hallam. Exo Manowar is essentially the franchise. He's the main character, Erica Dacia. If you've read any of Dennis Hopeless Hallam's Exo Manowar, it's an embarrassment. He knows nothing of the character. He just decided to reboot it. They forgot to tell everybody. If you enjoyed Exo Manowar prior to this, we don't borrow anything from what people liked and what was actually selling. We're just going to start over. We're going to send him to like fucking Canada. It was pathetic. Do not read Exo Manowar from Dennis Hopeless Hallam. It is absolutely a hopeless endeavor. So, of their four main stalwart heroes, SHADOWMAN, Bloodshot, Ninjak, Exo Manowar, one of them's readable, one of them's MIA, and the other two are dead. They're also launching the Harbinger, which is the big team book. You've also had the Valiant and Unity in the past, but the Harbinger is the big one, the one that Joshua Dysart rebooted. It was just Harbinger at that point. Now it's the Harbinger. They're relaunching that with Jackson Lanzig and Colin Kelly. Those guys are going to bring all dick all for as far as fans in because nobody knows who they are. But art with Robbie Rodriguez. Let's relaunch our main superhero team book within our very small press indie book or indie publisher. And let's bring in an artist that literally sent unfiltered pictures of his anus to somebody on social media. You don't have enough readers to do shit like this. It's a fucking clown show, and it's never going to get better. Valiant Comics will never, ever return to anything remotely resembling respectability. Rob Levin, I'm sure he was glad to take the job. I hope they gave him more money than he was getting at Humanoid. He deserves it for all the shit he's going to get for the enormously terrible comic book line that he's going to be overseeing. DMG Entertainment are an absolute shit show. When we think about the worst that can happen when a big corporate entity buys a publisher, you're like, oh, look what happened to Marvel. Look what happened to DC. Fuck that. Look what happened to Valiant. At least Marvel and DC have 80 years of history. You can go, you know what? Right now might suck, but based on past experience, something good's going to happen. Valiant Comics doesn't have enough history for people to think that about them. And you have DMG Entertainment, who couldn't even put out and help produce a halfway decent Bloodshot movie. And the only reason they bought Valiant to begin with was because their films have been optioned off, and they thought it would be a good way to make some money. And they know nothing about comic books. It's a dead brand. Speaking of DMG Entertainment, and I don't think Rob Levin is the problem here. I think it is the DMG Entertainment that's the real problem. We did hear from Joshua Dysart earlier in the week. I talked about some of his issues, but he also was talking about when he signed up to be one of the original creators of Valiant back in 2012 when they relaunched. Dinesh Shamdasani and Warren Simmons, the guys behind Bad Idea Now, created something called the Property Royalty Pool, where essentially, as Valiant properties were optioned off by studios and they've had payouts, everyone that was involved in the property would get a payout. And so if you created the Harbinger, you'd be in the Harbinger pool. If you created Exo Manowar, you'd be in the Exo Manowar pool. If you created Bloodshot, you'd be in the Bloodshot pool. And in 2015, Sony did option off Bloodshot and Harbinger. And Joshua Dysart mentions that he received chew checks over 2 years totaling about $20,000. Pretty decent money. But in 2019, after DMG Entertainment had forced Dinesh Shamdasani and Warren Simmons out, and we basically began our descent into hell as far as the Valiant shared universe, they took over, and Paramount actually bought the Harbinger option from Sony for a large sum of money. And this is what Joshua Dysart has to say, quote, "Since the DMG takeover, I have not received a single check from the property royalty pool and was not even told by the company that Harbinger was even sold," unquote. It's a shit company. They're not in it for comic books. We knew that to begin with. They're not even in it to acknowledge anyone that had any type of contribution. They're just in there to hopefully collect some paychecks until they've bled this franchise dry and there's no value left whatsoever. By the time DMG is over with this, it'll be like Acclaim. It'll be dead. Acclaim bought Valiant to turn it into this really cool video game universe and fell on their faces and ruined it. And DMG bought Valiant, the second iteration, so they could pimp it off, part it off for streaming television and movie rights fees. And then when it's done, it'll just be a dead husk of itself. Hopefully somebody like Dinesh Shamdasani will come in and buy it, on the cheap again and maybe give it another go. But they're leeches. And it's just too bad. There's nothing anyone probably that was, proficient, who warranted the promotion up to executive editor at Valiant Comics. At this point, just because DMG is behind it, it's almost an anchor holding you back. You would have hoped that they would have tried a little bit harder to find somebody that could turn this around. Rob Levin was probably the path of least resistance. You can see the guy that would already ran the comic or helped run the comic division into the ground with no new stories, absolutely jettisoning any type of continuity or history of the characters, and just spinning its wheels as people abandoned ship himself, but he got to name the new captain. It's a weird thing. Valiant Comics is absolutely fucked. I thought, hey, Heather Antos is gone. These are, maybe they've realized that they've screwed the pooch and it's time to turn things around. That's obviously not the case. An event can't save them. A relaunch of The Harbinger can't save them. The inevitable Bloodshot relaunch that'll happen in 2022 can't save them. They're a victim of themselves. It's the blind leading the blind, and Valiant Comics is there's no hope left. I hate to break it to you. I'll continue reading SHADOWMAN just because it's all right, it's good, but that's an anomaly. It's an accident at this point. There have been so many new launches from Valiant over the last 2 or 3 years, and all of them have been shitty except for a couple. SHADOWMAN's really the one that stands out. And at this point, you're like, well, apparently Cullen Bunn can write a horror-themed action hero or superhero, with no oversight whatsoever and do pretty good. And that's all that you can learn from this. It sucks being a Valiant fan. I wish we could turn back the clock and go back to the good old days. But the cool thing is that time period when Valiant kicked ass from 2012 to 2018, they only produced 5-6 comics a month. You can actually read the entire Valiant universe that was badass, and it's probably got 5 or 6 events in there that are actually worth your time. You can probably read it in a few months. It's totally worth your time, and it's very depressing to see what's happened. Good luck, Rob Levin. You're going to need it.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.